And welcome to the Core Connection. I'm Mira Rubin here with you on Enlightened World Network. And today's topic is trust and safety and their inseparability. So it should be an interesting conversation. Before we get started, let's take a minute or two to get present. Let's take a deep breath in through your nose and hold it. And imagine clean, crisp oxygen flooding your lungs, flowing into your bloodstream, nourishing all your cells, all your organs, bringing vital life energy to your body and being. And as you exhale any tension, stress, negativity, fatigue. And now let's take another deep breath in through your nose and hold it. This time, imagine brilliant, bright light lighting you up from the inside out, illuminating, electrifying, and energizing all your cells, all your molecules, all your electrons, creating a brilliant beam of light and energy from your heart out into the world. And as you exhale any remaining tension, stress, negativity, fatigue. And now let's press our palms together and vigorously rub your hands together to feel the friction, the temperature, the pressure, the motion, the tickling and tingling when you stop. And allow all those sensations to bring you present right here, right now, into this remarkable physical form that enables us to experience life. Welcome, welcome, welcome. So, it looks like we are streaming. I wasn't quite certain. So it looks like we are on this Friday morning, and we're talking about trust and safety. And I've been known to observe that all trust is self-trust. Good morning, Rosalind. Welcome, welcome, welcome. So when we talk about trust being, all trust being self-trust, what we're talking about is being able to trust our own discernment, being able to trust ourselves, to listen to ourselves and trust what we're hearing. When we say that, when we experience that sense of trust, when we trust our gut, for example, then there's an assurance that goes with that, a sense of clarity, perhaps clarity, direction. We feel a greater sense of safety when we have the trust. Like if, let's say, you're crossing a bridge, you're trusting that that bridge is sturdy, and therefore there's a sense of safety. You have the confidence to cross that bridge. So what does it take? What does it take to cultivate this trust? Because when we don't feel safe, what do we experience? We experience a sense of fear, anxiety, anticipation, dread, all kinds of things when we don't feel safe. And so one of the reasons that this is an important conversation is because our world is calling for us to step up and become more engaged. And it's often the fear that will be visible or that will be in danger that stops us from standing up, stepping up. And one of the the ways that we can access a greater sense of trust in life overall, even though it doesn't mean that nothing bad is going to happen or that we're not going to get challenged or anything, is to allow ourselves to step into that life is happening for me and through me rather than to me. And if indeed life is happening for me and through me, that cultivates a sense of, or it creates a context anyway, for us to cultivate a sense of trust and safety. It doesn't mean, again, that nothing bad will happen or that nothing challenging will happen, but it gives us a new context with which to engage in those challenges, with which to face those challenges. And it's a very deepening process. It is a process that takes us to deeper levels of being and experience, to be allowing ourselves to really engage with this notion of life happening for me and through me rather than to me. It's a very different perspective, and it has very much to do with the connectedness of everything too. We've been talking about that a lot, about being part of this field of greater information that permeates everything, that is continuous, that connects, that is everything that is, that everything that is like a ripple on the surface of the water, but we're all of the water. And this notion of life is happening for me and through me is an extension of that notion of unity, of oneness, of continuity. And when we experience a sense of safety, we are better able to face challenges, to take risks, to step out, to speak up, to take action. And it's important to make the distinction that the kind of safety that we're talking about really is kind of a meta safety. It doesn't mean it doesn't mean that I feel safe and therefore I can walk out into the middle of traffic and not get hit by a car. It means being present to our experience, to the world, being engaged in the world so that we can calibrate appropriately to the threats that may exist, that we can recognize them and respond appropriately rather than out of paralysis or fear. So it doesn't mean being able to walk out into the middle of traffic and believe that you're going to be safe. It means being able to time the traffic in such a way that you can cross safely because you're tuned in. You're tuned in and connected. And like pretty much all of our other conversations, it all comes back to presence. And the essence of presence is connection, is being present to the impulses generated by the field that we can receive. that give us information and that then can guide us in in our in our actions. So Rosalind says softening the edges. So being less triggered. If you are convinced and your belief makes it true, if you are convinced and your belief makes it true, question if it is not conditional thought patterns. There is dismantling threat when I can see the mind as simply having thoughts. I love that, Rosalind. So what you're saying, if I'm interpreting it properly, is to be able to be our own witness, to be our own witness to our thought processes, to the the underpinnings of our reactions, to be able to sort of step back and see from another perspective our own reactivity, our own conditional patterning, our own programming, to be able to be our own witness observer. And that then can give us freedom to modify behaviors, to actually have choice. So in a situation where we feel threatened or triggered, when we have the opportunity to see it, it allows us to step back from the downward spiral that might exacerbate and accelerate panic, fear, reactivity. So presence, as we've said, is kind of the answer to pretty much everything. And one of the ways that we can find greater presence is through curiosity. Curiosity is such a profound tool to counteract judgment and to kind of interrupt a pattern. So if we're going into fear, we can move into a state of curiosity, and then that takes us at least 1 degree out of that experience of fear to be looking at what's that about. Now, the thing that I've noticed is that when I get into a reactive pattern, it's a pretty intense kind of vortex that tends to suck you in. And it takes a concerted intention to step out of that vortex, because the programming is so strong that we can step back, we can start looking, and then the conversation starts again to justify the experience of whatever that reactivity was, talking us into why we should be fearful, or why we should be upset or indignant or enraged. And we can just like fall back into that vortex. So we're constantly pulling ourselves out, pulling ourselves back from that vortex to be looking at, wow, look at this pattern. This is pretty intense. It's pretty powerful pattern. And by recognizing it as a pattern, at least we're denaturing it to some degree. We're able to, even to a minor degree, mitigate it and ramp it back a bit. it's so interesting to see it. I think it's possible to get to a point where you can kind of see yourself ramping up. You can see yourself starting to go down that path. And when we have the grace of being able to see that happening, we do have an opportunity for choice. We do have the opportunity to put our attention elsewhere, to redirect our attention, to refine our attention, to break the pattern. So one of the things that we can do when we start seeing ourselves going down that downward spiral vortex, we can do something that's a pattern interrupt. So a pattern interrupt would be just get up and dance, or play music, or do something physical that shakes it up, literally physically move in a way that changes your state, jump up and down, laugh, smile, do something that derails that pattern. And what happens is, as we do that more and more, as we practice more and more, derailing that pattern, trusting ourselves to be able to do that, that pattern becomes less ingrained, and we can experience greater safety. Another way, another factor in this is recognizing that that is just a pattern, and that can elevate our sense of, oh, it's just a pattern. I don't have to be at the effect of it. When we're feeling safe, we're feeling some sense of integration, some sense of self-determination. That's a big part of it. So Rosalind says, curiosity. Ask self, what am I afraid of? Are my thoughts patterns, operating system related to protecting me? Protecting me from what? So it's great to ask questions, really important. What am I afraid of? Remember that when we ask questions, our brain is wired in such a way that it is going to find answers for us. So if we ask questions that take us down, we can ask questions that take us further down the spiral, and our brain will happily comply. It's like a heat-seeking missile. So if we say things, if we ask questions like, what's wrong with me? We're going to get a litany of answers about what's wrong with me. So we want to be looking at maybe even more specifically, as we're exploring this fear, is what triggered me? What might that trigger be reminding me of from the past? So educating ourselves as to empowering questions, or questions that are going to maybe move us out of the spiral, can help. We can also say ask questions like, reminding ourselves that in this moment, am I okay? Because oftentimes, most times, even though we might get frightened about something, or we might get upset or angry, defensive, if we can say, in this moment, am I okay? What can I do to be okay in this moment? What kind of insight can I gain right now about this experience? What can I recognize that is this moment that the same as the moment that from the past that I'm triggered around, that this reminds me of? When we can start bringing these things conscious, it's like shining light on a shadow. The darkness dissipates, and we have the ability to start bringing ourselves more into the present by recognizing that it isn't the past. You know, that happened, whatever that was, that happened, and I've got stuff to resolve around that, and this is not that moment. This is now. And it may look similar. I can see how it looks similar. And what resources can I bring to this moment, knowing that it's not that thing from the past? What kind of resourcefulness can I generate? What might be available to me now that wasn't available to me then? Now that I see this situation, how could an empowering question would be, how can I interact with this in a way that empowers me? How can I find alignment with myself in the face of this challenge? What would it feel like if I had full presence right now? Questions like that might seem a stretch, but the thing is that when we ask those kinds of questions, remember that our mind is like a heat-seeking missile. It wants to answer the question. So if I ask questions like, what would it feel like to be able to breathe easily right now? What would it feel like if my body were relaxed? What would it feel like if I were centered at this moment? If I were able to think through this or respond to this in a life-affirming way, what might I do? How might I feel? It takes presence to be able to ask oneself these kinds of questions, particularly when you're on a roll down the hill, right? That is ever accelerating. To be able to break that state, to be able to willfully change state is part of our evolutionary experience. It is part of our growing awakening to be able to see ourselves, to be connecting with that higher level of intelligence that can see the dynamics in our own lives without us just going merrily along the way unconscious in a robotic programmed fashion. It is a way for us to regain our sovereignty, our self-determination, our presence, our connection, our connectedness. So another thing that deeply affects safety, the feeling of safety, is isolation. When we believe that we're isolated and separate, there's a sense of me against the world kind of thing. And in actuality, that's not the truth. So the notion of connectedness, being able to know that we're part of something greater, even though it doesn't necessarily make sense and it might not seem relevant to whatever the experience is, the fear that I had a conversation, multiple conversations with a client recently who had for a good portion of their lives a deep, deep, deep fear of death, deep terror around death. And their experience or their notion of death was being cast out to the furthest and darkest reaches of the universe in total isolation and nothingness. And what was so marvelous, we talked about Carlos Castaneda and having death as an advisor. What they said as a result of our work around the issue of death was that it's changed direction. Before it was going, the experience was that it was going out to the farthest, most bleak regions of the universe. And what they said is it's now changed direction and it's coming to center and connection with all things rather than isolation from everything. And there's a deep sense of safety that comes from that, or a sense of greater trust, a greater ease to be an expression of that interconnection of all things. And so I extend an invitation to all of us to be exploring this connection, this inseparability that we are with everything that is. So Rosalind says, welcoming this day as an opportunity to yet again turn our eyes to the horizon and dream our lives into being. Oh my gosh, Rosalind, thank you for that. What a wonderful way to end this morning and start the weekend. And thank you, thank you. I'm Mira Rubin. This is the Core Connection, and I go live here each weekday morning at 9 a.m. Eastern on the Enlightened World Network Facebook page and YouTube channel. And my Facebook page, I invite you to like and follow the Enlightened World Network YouTube channel as well as mine. The links are in the description. And as always, it's a deep, deep pleasure and privilege to have this opportunity to spend time with you, musing about the nature of reality and life. So until next time, so much love to you.